Hey there, friends, and welcome to another edition of Strange Planet. And it is a far stranger planet than we can possibly comprehend. On this episode, two sisters desperate for answers say a psychic medium led them to their missing mother's body. But before we get to that conversation, just a reminder, if you'd like to get a little deeper into Strange Planet, you might want to consider becoming a premium subscriber, and it's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. You gain access to commercial-free listening, special bonus episodes produced exclusively for premium subscribers, and you receive my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum. Again, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. This is a remarkable story. Union Parish in Louisiana. Let me just read the news account here. Desperate for answers, two sisters turn to a medium in Wisconsin who they claim led them directly to their missing mother's body. And we're going to meet the psychic medium at the center of this story. And as well, we're going to meet a gentleman who has consulted on this case as well. He's former law enforcement. Carolyn Clapper is with us right now. She is well, had a lifelong experience with the paranormal. She saw spirits, had psychic experiences from a young age. However, it wasn't until her near-death experience with meningitis back in 2011 that she experienced a bombshell transition into full-blown mediumship. Her abilities were magnified by 100-fold or more, with a boundless ability to communicate with spirit between two worlds. She had been miraculously healed on November the 11th, 2011. That's right, 11/11/11, and released from her deathbed. Though she had returned from the next world, her connection remained. And after months of giving on-spot readings to random strangers in public places, her name began to spread like wildfire. Mediumship took over her life until she finally decided to take it on. And Carolyn is now known as the Next World Medium. She has one foot in this world and one foot in the next at all times. She's an evidential and medical medium who has located people both deceased and alive, brought through pathology reports prior to autopsy, and has found illnesses and ailments and countless others, which have all then been validated and confirmed by medical doctors. The magnitude of Carolyn's expanded awareness has included everything from hauntings to departed loved ones, missing persons, and cold case homicides, to rare and misdiagnosed illnesses, real estate and finances, to national and global predictions, all later validated. And as Carolyn Clapper often reminds others, the credit belongs to spirit, not to her. Carolyn Clapper, welcome back to Strange Planet. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Lieutenant Greg Lawson is a retired sheriff's office lieutenant, police academy director of training, and current criminal justice college professor. He has 32 years of law enforcement experience, including working as a patrol deputy, mental health investigator, hostage negotiator, and suicide mediator, SWAT officer, academy instructor, major crimes detective, underwater evidence recovery team specialist, lake patrol and dive team sergeant, and patrol watch commander. He served 10 years with the U.S. military as a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division, as an operations specialist on board the USS Nimitz, and as a firearms and tactics instructor in the 301st Fighter Wing. He's written 5 books on the paranormal, including How to Be a Paranormal Detective and his latest, Messages from Mothman, a review of the signs and symbols in our lives. Greg Lawson, welcome back to Strange Planet to you. How are you?
Thank you, my friend. I'm very well. Good to be here.
All right, so let's get into the particulars of the case. I'll begin with you, Carolyn. The two sisters, their mother, Teresa Jones, went missing back in February of 2023. How did they know to reach out to you?
So Brittany, the younger of the two daughters, reached out to me because she had been following me on social media. She lost her father when she was really young. So about 12 years old, her father committed suicide. So she had a really hard time with that. Um, She was raised to be God-fearing in a really Christian environment. And so she wasn't privy on mediums or psychics, but she had seen some articles or, read about me somewhere and knew that I had solved some other missing persons cases. So she figured, hey, she's the real deal if she's locating people. So she just started following me on a whim, not knowing that her mom would eventually go missing and she would need to reach out to me.
So just give us the the details about the disappearance of Teresa Jones on February 2nd, 2023. What do we know?
We know a lot. We know a lot. So I'm not able to speak of everything that I know. I think what's been shared on air and with media has probably been about 10% of what I gave them. So without giving too many details right now, because I mean, they've closed the case, right? I believe they closed the case prematurely. I'm considering it as an open case, as is Greg, as is the family. Like, we're not done with Teresa's case right now. So basically, when they called me, well, they contacted me at about 11 p.m. on, I believe, February 5th. So just a few days following their mom going missing. The police had already, questioned people and done their search with, including a canine unit. And I believe they were only out there for like one day with the canine unit and the search party and everything. And they came up empty-handed. They had nothing, like no clues at all. So they were kind of, the daughters were left out to sea in a way. They were just really stressed out and worried about it. So Brittany said that the first thing that popped into her head was me because she had been following me on Facebook. So just on a whim, she reached out to me at about 11 o'clock at night and just asked me, will you help me find my mother? Like, my mom's missing. Can you help me find my mom? And I don't know, as a mother and a daughter, it just it struck me. How can you say no, right?
Yeah.
I had just finished giving a 2.5 hour medical reading and I was exhausted. I get migraines, chronic migraines when I do readings sometimes. So I wasn't in the right headspace necessarily, like, or the ideal headspace, I would say. Um, but I just wanted to help the girls as best as I could. So I said, go ahead and take notes and write down everything that I say. And her mom came through to me immediately. I began getting what she looks like, um, the area that she lived in, specific details about her home and her environment, her personality, interpersonal relationships with people that she was, I don't know, like friends with, family with, everybody around her.
Is she
It kind
communicating
of
this
like,
to you? Sorry, Carolyn, is she
no,
communicating
go.
this to you, or are you just getting a flood of images?
It's both. It's both. I don't know. It's hard to put in terms that people would understand here that don't have this gift. I try. It's hard. So I get imagery. I get basically like movies, like so I get scenes played out through my mind. I also get the person in spirit, so they are physically with me. I see them. It kind of switches, you know what I mean, back and forth. Um, I don't get audio. I get telepathy. So it's just a different type of language. It's a lot easier actually than our language. It's quicker. You almost get downloads of information. It's kind of like if you were to put a JPEG into your computer and download a whole bunch of information, and then you'd have to go through it on your screen to decipher and to pull apart all of that information. It's sort of similar to that, if that makes sense.
Right. So Teresa Jones, 56 years old. She has two adult daughters, some
Mhm.
grandchildren,
Yeah.
living in Bernice, Louisiana, just outside of Farmerville, Louisiana. When she appeared to you in spirit, what did she look like?
Well, she was really relaxed. Like, she just looked like a chill person. You could tell that she was probably very beautiful in her youth. She was still beautiful, to this day, but you could tell that she was a looker. She told me that, she always dated below her level. I guess like people would always tell her that, she was too good looking for so and so, and you know what I mean? And she lived in a small town. I got the knowing that like people had complimented her whole life. You could be an actress, things like that. Um, I saw her at a bonfire in her backyard with her family and her friends. And she was just laughing, and she has this laugh that like just comes from the belly. You can't not laugh when she's laughing, right? She kind of has this like Joplin, Janis Joplin vibe to her a little bit because she's pretty chill. And this raspy kind of like laugh that's awesome. I know I say I can't hear, but I can hear in my mind, so it's a little bit different.
Right.
So I get, an image of her outside. She's smoking a cigarette. She tells me that she only smokes menthol cigarettes and she's never bought a pack. She only bums them. So she's someone who bums cigarettes but only will bum menthol. So this is like little intricate things, details that nobody would know by looking her up or, anything like that. Just she's establishing her character to me
Right. And
and
as
also
you're getting
establishing trust.
right, establishing trust. Okay. And as
Yes.
he's communicating these images to you and these minute details, intimate
Mm,
details, are you
mhm.
communicating these back to Brittany, her daughter,
Yes.
sort of as validation?
Correct. So I don't have anybody speak on the phone. Yes or no is fine. I'm just bringing this through. I'm like, do you understand, right? What I'm saying so I can move on to the next thing. And I just get yeses or I don't know. And when she says I don't know, then I just say write it down anyways. It doesn't matter. Just keep writing it down. Um, she then she shows me the relationship with people and then takes me inside of her home. And she kind of says, I know it's not that fancy. I know people say, trailer is like trailer trash and there's like a bad reputation for that, but she shows me that she's kind of OCD and she keeps a very tidy, clean house. And I go inside of her house. I enter in with her in my mind. And she goes straight to it, straight to the day that she went missing. And I begin seeing everything that went on, who she was talking to, uh, where items were left before she disappeared. Um, just very, very intricate details. Halfway through the reading, because I'm not able to share a bunch of those details at this point because it's an open case to us, okay? So I just unfortunately can't share those details yet. Um, but she showed me what where people worked, what their jobs are, what her retirement plan was. And it was really specific to her. You know what I mean? Just like things that you would never know by looking at social media or anything like that. She then stops me and shows me another woman on the phone listening in on mute. Okay. And I can see what this girl looks like. She has redder hair, like a strawberry blonde. And she shows me that the two sisters that are on the phone, the one that called me, Brittany, okay, she's in one state closer to me. And then the other sister, she shows me that they're half sisters, they're half blood, both related through mother, through her. So she birthed them both, they have different dads. So I'm gathering all this information. She says Ashley is on the phone on mute from Louisiana, and she tells me she lives right by me. So she's the closest one to me. She's on mute right now. Have her take really good notes because I'm now going to give you directions from my home to where my body is.
Wow.
Okay. And she says, she really has to listen. So I ask, hey, Brittany, is your sister on mute right now in Louisiana? And she says, no, ma'am. I assure you it's just us. And I kind of just laughed because her mom looked at me in like a mom way, like, okay, you know what I mean? Like she's not telling the truth, she kind of smiled. And I go, okay, well, if she is, I'm like, have her take very thorough notes. And I'm going to give her instructions right now. And she's going to want to follow them exactly to her mom's body. Okay. So I hear, it's just us. And so anyway, I go on and I give them instructions. She tells me to start from her home. And then she tells them to go south, from her home, from a specific spot in her home, to walk south till she hits a wood line and then go southwest until she hits this prominent log that's going to make her stop in her path. And there should be a creek behind it. And that's where her body is. Okay. So there's some other details there, but that's like the gist of it.
Right, right.
And so the next day, Ashley calls me And you know, she identifies herself as Teresa's daughter. She calls me, she says, "Hi, Carolyn, this is Ashley. I'm Teresa's daughter. I'm the one you saw on the phone on mute." She says, "I'm so sorry for lying to you." And
Mm.
she was so apologetic, just apologizing up and down for lying. She said, "I'm not a liar. I can't, I felt so bad about this. I wanted to call you and let you know that I found Mama's body exactly where you said she would be. I followed the instructions and we found her, and I needed to tell you." So it was then that I went into a second reading with her, immediately on spot.
All right. Before we get to the second reading, so Ashley relayed all of these details as to the location of her mother Teresa's body to the county sheriff in
That's
Farmville,
correct.
Louisiana.
Yes.
And what did the sheriff make of this report?
I mean, I can't speak for anybody else. I can tell you what I heard and what I read through an email that was sent to him. Um, he basically took the information or didn't take the information. I'm not quite sure if he wrote it down or not. It was offered to him when he said, "How did you find your mother's body?" She said, "We contacted a medium in an evidential medium in Wisconsin, and she led us to Mom's body directly over the phone in 45 minutes." And she's like, please call her. This is her information. Please call her. She has a lot more information surrounding Mom's disappearance. Like, please call her. So she gave them, this is through Ashley. This is what Ashley told me. So she provided my information to, the department and so forth, and to the people in charge. And then I never heard from them. So then Ashley called me several times asking if I had heard back from them over the coming weeks. And I said, "No, I have not." And she said, "Please, please call them because nothing's happening. Like, just please call them."
Oh,
So I called and left 3 messages.
who actually discovered the body? Did Ashley, or did she tell the police and they went out and
Oh,
discovered the body?
no, no, no. Ashley and her friend, she employed a friend of hers to come with her, and they found her mother's body. They found her jacket first, and then they found her mother's body exactly where her mom said she would be. So,
And you also described the exact position
right.
her mother's body would be found, which was what?
Right. So the position of her mother's body, I was shown. I also was shown where there would be rigor mortis and so forth, and what was rigor mortis, what marks were from rigor mortis, and which were from other things. So the second reading, she just paused. She said, "I'm here. I want to take you through this again." And I said, "Ashley, I'm so sorry to ask this of you. If you're too traumatized right now, like, let me know. We don't have to do this, right?" And I said, "But your mom's here again. She wants to tell you some more information. Would you like to know it?" And she said, "Yes, tell me everything." And at that point, I was taken through, it was a really unusual, it was just unique. It was unique to this case. So her mom takes me into like Ashley's body or her eyes, if that makes sense. I'm now Ashley seeing through Ashley's eyes. Okay. And I'm looking at the scene and I'm seeing Teresa's body. Okay. Laying on the ground. And I see then her holding her iPhone up, and I knew she had an iPhone. She pulls up the camera and I can see her clicking photos of her mom's body. And I'm like, this can't be right, right? And so I said, "Ashley, did you take photographs of your mom's body?" And she said, yes, that she had. And I said, "Wow, okay, well, that's really smart, probably. I don't know, maybe you'll need that later. Okay." And I said, "Now, her mom asked me to have Ashley pull up the photographs and let me go through the photographs with her without telling me what they were, and I would tell her." So she pulled up the photographs and I went through them, describing them, the marks on the body and so forth. And then her mom provided her pathology and toxicology report to me. And another boy that I found in Janesville, Wisconsin, stepped in to help at this point to help me with her case, which is really interesting.
Okay, before
And
we get to
oh,
to
go ahead.
to this gentleman, though, the position of the body Um, was it face down in the creek or?
Correct.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a time out. We'll come back and we're going to introduce Lieutenant Greg Lawson, who's consulting on the case, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. All right, let's get Lieutenant Greg Lawson in here, retired sheriff's office lieutenant. And how did you get involved in this? How did you meet Carolyn, Greg? And when we say you're consulting in the case, what does that mean exactly?
It's a good question. What does that mean? So Carolyn and I met through a third party on another project. And we've kind of collaborated on different things, trying to figure out where our groove is, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so she brought this to me, just kind of asking some questions because, as you look at it, if you're not in law enforcement and you look at it from an untrained eye, it's kind of like, well, why wouldn't they do this? Why wouldn't they do that? But there might be a reason, right? And so we started working on that. She shared some of the stuff, some of the information with me in the beginning. And the thing that threw up red flags for me was there's kind of some industry standards and best practices that you do. And when you don't do it, optics, it makes you look bad. It makes the individuals look either complacent or incompetent, one of the two, just right off the bat, that first impression is like, why wouldn't you do these particular things? And so we started going through that and working with, Carolyn had been working with a reporter that had contacted her. And then we had done an open records request for the report. Well, initially we got the report and about 1/3 of it was redacted.
Uh-huh.
Now, which didn't make any sense. And the way that the redaction, the way the report was given to us was kind of, it wasn't a pleasant experience. It wasn't like, oh yeah, let me show you this. It was very, why are you wanting this? It was just, it wasn't a pleasant experience. And then you get a report that is supposed to be a closed case and you have you have all this redaction in it. That makes absolutely no sense. And that was a huge red flag for me. I'm like, what are these guys doing? And so I looked through that portion of it and a whole bunch of it didn't make sense. The thing that did, go ahead.
Sorry, when you say the report, are you talking about the pathology report, the autopsy, the actual scene where the body was discovered, all of these things?
So just the detective's report at that point. So when they asked for the open records, that's all they provided was a redacted detective's report, which makes no sense because you and I both know in a case file, when you ask for open records, everything except for specific things like dates of birth or, telephone numbers and stuff of involved persons would not be there. If there's undercover people, those names would be redacted, not whole paragraphs, not, multiple paragraphs redacted. So this is just the detective's report. The pathology report wasn't released until later. We actually got that later. But that was the big thing initially. It was a big red flag of what Carolyn was talking about. It's like, are they trying to cover up something here? It was very strange.
And when you and Carolyn talked about this case, and she told you what she saw and the communication she received telepathically from the spirit of Teresa Jones. I mean, how did you react? I mean, you've researched the paranormal, you've written about it extensively, but put on your major crimes detective hat now for a moment, and maybe before. I mean, how would you have reacted to this? Let's say before you started investigating all of this stuff.
So let's put it this way. Let's do a line. On one side is true believer. On the far other side is cynic. A skeptic floats around in the middle based on the evidence that's provided. I have no clue how psychic mediumship, clairvoyance, or any of those other things work. I don't have a clue. The way I look at those things is I will go down that investigative path with a clairvoyant, a medium, a psychic, whatever their name is. I will go down that until the evidence doesn't match up. And it continues not to match up. Then it's like, you know what? I'm going down a rabbit trail at this point, in Alice in Wonderland. I can't figure out where I'm going. I have to stop someplace. But when a person comes forward and provides good information, is very factual information, correct information, the way I look at that is you look at it through, like, if you're using binoculars or if you're using some other tool, why not, why not go down that line of investigation? And the thing that I've learned about working with mediums in my past is they think very much differently than I do. So while I'm sitting in my little investigative box, trying not to be a cynic, and I'm trying to use my industry standards and best practices, this other person is popping up with these other things I would have never considered. And so coming forward like this, an investigator, you have to qualify your witness. So an investigator needs to spend a little bit of time with that witness to figure out if this individual, has good information, or they're misinformed, or they have a mental illness and they're, experiencing whatever they're experiencing.
If you were working the Union Parish Sheriff's Office, this missing person case, and the daughter came to you with this precise information they said they received from Carolyn Clapper, a psychic medium in Wisconsin, a long ways away from Louisiana, and all of these details turned out to be correct, wouldn't you get on the phone immediately with Carolyn Clapper and say, how did you know this? Or what else can you tell me?
You would think, right? And that's the danger about officers in law enforcement. Most law enforcement officers have a little bit of college, but they don't have a degree. So there's a lot of critical thinking stuff that they don't delve off into. They look strictly at the Code of Criminal Procedure, the Penal Code, the Family Code. They look at procedures for investigation, and then they carry all this baggage with them, and this baggage being all the calls that they go to when they talk to quote unquote crazy people, or they have somebody maybe that's involved in drugs, and they look at that involvement and what has happened with this person as a template for every other drug case that they worked. It's like, all right, it's common taking your clothes off and running around when you're on meth or PCP or whatever. It's common to, have your house in complete disarray. It's common to be paranoid. It's common to do all these things. That's beside the point. It's like saying, okay, this person is diagnosed and is suffering from schizophrenia. So I'm not going to ask them what happened at the bank robbery.
Right.
It's like, how do you just completely discount information? And plus, I'm sorry, Carolyn would be my number one suspect. when you call in or actually when somebody contacts you and then you give really good information on where the body is and the cops can't find them, the canine cops can't find them, the search party can't find them, and this person tells the daughter, go here and your mom's there, and she does and her mom's there, man.
Exactly.
Wow. I'm sorry. There would be an investigation for me. There would be an investigation open on Carolyn.
Right.
At bare minimum, I would interview her. I may even do some cursory background stuff on stuff on the internet or whatever. Do something, not just. I mean, this wasn't even a redaction. This was a elimination.
Exactly. Carolyn, we should also point out the Teresa Jones was found. She was naked from the waist down. She was wearing a shirt, I guess, only a shirt.
Correct.
So no
So,
undergarments, no nothing.
so this is interesting. So she was found from, nude from the waist down. That's correct. There were a lot of marks on her. Won't go through them today. I really want to, but I'm not going to. Let me just mention she was found nude from the waist down in the middle of nowhere. Okay, well, not in the middle of nowhere, but in a forest, in a creek, right? And it was near her property. It wasn't far from her property. So in that 5 days of being missing, when there was a search party out there with a canine unit, okay, like a couple days prior, aren't they going to ask why they couldn't find her? Now, secondly, when I was looking at it in my mind, when I was being shown this information, I was shown that that creek couldn't be more than like 3.5 feet deep. Now, I haven't been there. I'm not a scientist. I'm not anything but who I am. But this is the information I was given. It hasn't been confirmed or denied yet because nobody's gone out there to look. Greg's going to possibly go out there at some point here and take a look, do some investigation out there, which I really appreciate. And just, confirm that for me. And the police had chalked it up to Teresa's clothing coming off with the current of the water. From what I saw, there was not a strong enough current to be able to pull her clothing off. Now, again, that's my visions. That's not what I saw. That's not what I saw happen to her clothing. Okay. But this is what they're suggesting. This is their theory. And my whole thing is, okay, you're police, you have a theory. Shouldn't that be backed up by science and by, facts? So here's the thing. They're not listening to a psychic medium because he said that he had a bad experience with a psychic medium in the past. So whatever the case may be, he's not willing to talk to me. Okay. So he's chosen not to speak to me. They didn't find the body. They didn't find any evidence. They had no direction in this case whatsoever. The one person who knows a copious amount of information that's all accurate, all evidential, including handing them the body they couldn't find. They want to sit here and say that they have a guess that her clothes were stripped off of her in the water, but they have no clothing. I have my guesses are being dismissed. So all of a sudden their psychic mediums and their theories, they're going to write down and close a case on their theories when they're really not even mediums. And they're going to discredit a medium who's found several missing people at this point. If they had dug into me and dug into my past and looked into my, basically my portfolio of missing people, that builds its credibility itself. My work speaks for itself. Okay. And they wouldn't have had to look that far to see that I'm legit at what I do. And then just taking the information I have that I haven't ever been able to hand over to them. I was given information on possible people surrounding her case, very specific, even down to the miles away and the direction that they live in proximity to Teresa's home.
You're talking
So
about suspects here, suspects.
Correct.
We're talking
Yeah.
murder. We're talking
Potential.
okay,
So
potential. What was the official cause of death according to the parish sheriff's office?
Accidental drowning.
Accidental drowning.
Yeah,
Were there drugs involved?
there were. And again, I saw they're claiming that Teresa injected those drugs on her own. Prove it, right? And the mark that I saw on Teresa would suggest otherwise. There's a lot of holes in this case. And I'll say one thing, why haven't there been any arrests on the person who made the meth? Who, I mean, why hasn't there even been a drug arrest? I mean, nothing, nothing.
Hmm.
That's stunning. And I have information to give them, but it's just whatever. They closed the case, you know?
Carolyn, we'll take another time out. Greg as well. While back on the other side, Strange Planet. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Psychic medium Carolyn Clapper is with us, and Lieutenant Greg Lawson consulting on this remarkable case. 2 daughters, desperate to find their missing mother, reached out to Carolyn, and she directed them to the exact location of her body. The police in Louisiana, the parish sheriff's office, were unable to locate her until Carolyn Clapper provided the information. Greg, you've worked a number of aquatic death scenes. What else stands out to you in this case? Carolyn, mentioned the fact that the police said, well, the current took the current took her clothes away, and so forth. What else jumps out to you as a red flag here?
So I can see very easily, I can go into any cop's reports, and any cop can go into my investigations and say, hey, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? And I would need to answer those questions. In this particular case, there's some really standard things. Obviously, when the police initially went in there, they took these photographs in their mind of, oh, this is a meth house. Oh, this person had, methamphetamine addiction. Oh, this person was on a bad trip. They were paranoid. They were, did this, and they ended up running or going someplace and ending up in the water and drowning. Case closed. Completely eliminating anything else that could have possibly happened. Do you think any murders happen when meth is involved, or rapes happened, or robberies happened, or whatever, right? It's all drug related, all of that. And so when you look and you find a person, specifically a woman in this case, with an unattended death, no pants on, and you don't do a rape exam on her, you don't try to collect any kind of DNA to find out what's going on. You don't go down the line of conducting a competent drug investigation to find out where this methamphetamine came from. And I've been in those situations to where case management is more important than solving cases. Politically, case management for a cop is more important than handing over a bunch of people that they can convict at the DA's office, because it minimizes the drama around the office. You're taking care of your stuff and you're moving on. Because out of a case like this, what do we have? We have a possible murder case. We possibly have, we have drug distribution, drug possession, possibly drug manufacturing. No telling what other delivery mechanism that drug got into her body. And yet they just shrug their shoulders and go, yeah, well, whoever gave it to her, she's dead. And how are we going to prove? The actual supervisor for this case actually reached out to their DA and said, hey, we believe this person supplied the methamphetamine to her. The DA's response, I'm simplifying this very much, but the DA's response was, well, we can't prove that methamphetamine that they got is what killed her, so we're not going to pursue it.
I feel like I can though, because of
Yeah.
all the information that came through me. It was so very specific that had they done their homework with me, they could prove
Right.
it. And that's the problem here, is that we lost time,
A lot of
know,
time.
a lot of time. And then the word spread about some of the information that came through to me. So it gave people a chance to clean up their mess. And time is essential in any missing persons case, in any homicide case, and when people start, talking, that word can spread and it can cause damage, which is why I'm trying to not cause any more damage by supplying people with more information regarding the case that came through, because I'm still hoping for justice for Teresa and her girls. I do want to add that I had gotten that she hadn't been there for more than 24 hours in that location. So I'm not going to fault the police for not finding her before that. But it's very interesting to me that she was missing for so many days, yet they say that she ran from her house on the day she went missing out to the woods and face dove into this creek and died. But yet they can't account for the days that she was gone when they couldn't find her near her property. Like, hello, that's a complete hypocrisy and a complete it doesn't line up. You're telling me one thing while you're saying one thing out of one side of your mouth, you're saying another thing out of the other side of your mouth. Who's holding these people accountable? Like, your stories don't match up. Like, I'm not a cop, I'm not a detective, but I'll tell you what, my brain functions a lot more like Greg's, and he even knows. Like, I'm a very inquisitive person, and why I'm really good at what I do is because I kind of go into investigator and detective mode in my mind. When I do these readings, I am so damn inquisitive that I try and ask all the right questions and look at all the right things to get all the right evidence. So I don't leave any stone unturned, if you will, when I'm in these readings. And there's so much information that they have yet to source from me. And at this point, the family doesn't feel very trusting of the department to take it back on themselves, because maybe they'll just do a quick one over with me and disregard everything and close it again. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, it's not going to be taken serious.
What can you share with us without compromising in case this case is reopened? What else can you share with us that came to you from Teresa about her
Okay.
whereabouts, before she was found? Other
Okay, yeah, let me think about that. I can share that there were cameras all around her house. So when I was viewing the inside of her home and the exterior, I saw these security cameras and I thought that was interesting. I decided to hone in on those and see what that was about. I understood who that was installed by and why. I also saw at one point, Teresa showed me, in her words, the cameras were turned up. She didn't say I turned the cameras up. She said the cameras were turned up when I went missing. That makes me believe that it wasn't her who turned them up, meaning in an upward position where they could not view her part of the time. Okay. So there's some missing footage, which obviously could be confirmed by police if they had worked with me. Um, there were items found in her home. I knew where, her cell phone would be. I knew where specific items would be and how they got there. Um, there were without compromising the case, it's hard for me to share all the details. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I want to. I think it's easy to go down that road, but I think it only serves the purpose of ego for me.
I understand.
Because it would just be showing like how specific and detailed my readings are. But right now we need to keep the integrity of the case,
Can I? I'll ask you this, and if you can't answer it, that's fine.
Okay.
Would it have been advantageous to do um, a fingernail scrape?
Yeah, so when I was in the reading, seeing through the camera, like I told you, and we were going through Teresa's body, and I was given the pathology and toxicology report, and then what the coroner's notes would say later, what they would read, which was all accurate, by the way. They hadn't gotten the coroner's report back for another 3 days after that. So it was accurate. Anyway, when Jordan, oh, sorry. Well, his name was Jordan, this other kid that I found, when he came through and he helped to show me what was going to be on that report. Another interesting thing that came through was that I found him in the river in Janesville, and everything, all of his clothing was intact. Even the items that were in his pocket were there, and it was a very strong current. It was a big river, and he was there for a much, much longer time than Teresa was. And none of his clothing was stripped, not even the items of, not even the items that were in his pocket that I could describe. And it's stunning to me that they're saying that this little stream took her clothes off. And yeah, she told me that they didn't do a rape kit on her or a fingernail scraping. And then Ashley did confirm that to me later that they had not. And so that was one of our biggest issues.
Greg, what would be involved? How difficult is it to get a case reopened?
Incredibly difficult. No one wants to admit wrong. It makes them look bad. Once again, it's back to that case management thing. It's like especially like a medical examiner's office, once they rule, they do not want to go back on their ruling unless you have some overt evidence that they would not have been able to resolve. In this particular case, I was really surprised that they didn't have an estimated time of death in the autopsy report. That was fairly unusual. With aquatic death, it is kind of hard sometimes, but based on when the person goes missing, and then you can take a look at different things that happens with the body. You can get an estimate, but a lot of that has to do with the current, the environment, the temperature, all of that.
According to Ashley, Greg, um, this is hearsay right now for me, but according to Ashley, they confirmed that that the coroner said that, yeah, she was only there for about 24 hours, if that.
Yeah, and
So
during
that's
her
what the
time
coroner,
missing, where was she until she ends up in water?
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Carolyn, does Teresa continue to come to you and to give you clues?
Yes. Yes, and I've refused to go back into a reading at this point with her daughters to narrow down the exact perpetrator, or whatever you want to call it, because they don't have a law enforcement behind them at this point. So I feel like I would be handing them a loaded gun when they're emotional and they've just been through a lot of trauma. I think that would be a really negligent thing for me to do. This isn't normal for me. Normally, when I work on a case and a lot of information comes through to family members and so forth, the detective calls me and then they're on board because a lot more information comes through. We work together. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful detectives out there and great departments. It's not that they don't exist. It's just that this is a very unusual case for me because there was no contact at all and a refusal to contact. So,
What about
Well,
would the daughters be in a position to hire? I mean, maybe even pro bono, a private investigator to take these leads and investigate further, and then perhaps, if there is a case there, present it to the DA or the county sheriff's office?
well, and that's why I contacted Greg. Some of these things they were out of my league. I'm assuming that they were supposed to do a rape kit on a naked woman and, instead. Um, I'm assuming that they should have done a nail scrape, but let me call Greg and see if he can, explain some of this. Like I said, Greg will, probably go down there and check out the scene himself. And so they're getting, I worked pro bono for them. I've done everything pro bono for their case. And Greg's been very generous with his time as well, also pro bono. So they may be able to have somebody else come in. Maybe Greg can give us some new information, also, that, connects to what I've already gotten to. So
Greg,
hopefully.
Greg, are there details that Carolyn has shared with you vis-a-vis the spirit of Teresa that are tangible, that could, do you think, potentially lead to a reopening of the case?
I don't think anybody's going to do that until we come up with some additional things. I have not been able to look at the patrol deputies' reports, just the detectives' reports, the investigators' reports. So I have no idea whether they talked to neighbors at length and got statements from them. There's a difference between just being a deputy stepping by, knocking on the door and going, "Hey, did you see anything weird?" And everybody goes, "Nah, not really." "Okay, thanks." And you move on, as opposed to getting a statement from a neighbor saying, will you talk with me? Okay, tell me about Teresa. Tell me about what's been going on in the neighborhood. What do you know about her? What's her background? And getting that sort of information. Also, checking that whole area. Her, the scene of the house is completely compromised. It's gone, right? But if she truly had her pants taken off because of the flow of the water, as they're suggesting, her pants are somewhere. Now, somebody could have picked them up and thrown them away, but that's not typical around lakes and stuff. They end up getting washed in or whatever, but they're going to get snagged on something, depending on how far up that creek. And that's one of the reasons I want to go up there, is I want to figure out, where was she found? How far was it actually from the lake? How far upstream would the water flow have been? What's the level of the lake? What's the level of the creek? What's the temperature? And a whole bunch of other stuff that I would want to look at, that would fit into kind of a formula of, okay, this could have been most likely an accident due to a meth intoxication and someone being confused. But the way that they handled it, that's the big skepticism on my side. Is I have come in as a Monday morning quarterback, and as I'm second guessing these other cops, but they let me do it. They didn't do the kind of due diligence stuff that you would do in an aquatic death investigation. I'm willing to bet not a single guy that was involved in this investigation has ever been to a school that specializes in aquatic death. So, you could say, well, I don't need to do any fingernail scrapings because they're in the water, and the water would have diluted all that and it wouldn't have mattered anyway. Really? You know this? Wow. That's impressive that you can just come up with this and know for a fact that there's no one else's DNA under her fingernails or anywhere else in her body.
Carolyn, again, without, compromising the case, should it be reopened, do you have a name, a suspect?
I have potential suspects, yes. I also have vehicles and other things. So yes, I do. But none of this, again, is going to be looked at. It's clear that they're not going to contact me at this point. I don't foresee them doing that. I've also gotten some other cases dropped in my lap from the general area that seem really hairy. And I don't look, I don't read anything about them. I'm just telling you the emails I've gotten that, and I tell them, don't tell me anything more, because if I do end up working your case, then I like it, prefer to go in with less. It's just interesting. It's interesting. We'll see how this progresses in time, but I'm not going away. So,
Greg, what would you say to fellow law enforcement across the country, across the continent, with regards to psychic mediums and information they have?
So I would say follow industry standard, conduct your investigation, and cover all your bases, like doing a rape kit when you find a woman alone, not accompanied during her death, and she has no pants on. That's just a normal thing to do. You follow all your evidentiary leads. You talk to all of your witnesses or other involved persons. You get their statements either in video, audio, or transcribed into written word. You take care of all that. They did they did a good job for the easy stuff. You know, they knocked out the easy stuff to get taken care of. And then they jammed all of this into the template of a person who's on meth gets confused and compromises their safety. And they wrote it off that way. It's easy to do it that way. So once you get to that point, and if there is a psychic medium that you trust that is vetted, then figure out what your process is to run that by them before you close this thing up and put it in a file somewhere. You know, you've already run through everything. How is it going to hurt to bring somebody else in? You don't have to compromise the case by telling them everything that you've already done. You can just bring them in and go, hey, I'm going to take you to 3 different locations. They may be involved in this case or they may not be. And you just tell me what you think. And you take them to those 3 different locations. You write down what they say. You collect the data that they give you. You say thank you and move on. Then you corroborate that. You vet that on whether it makes sense, especially if you go to a place that's not related and they come up with all kinds of stuff. It's like, all right, this has nothing to do with the case. And then you move forward with that. Because every time I've ever done that, there's been 3 or 4 things that have come up that I have gone down that rabbit or gone back down that trail to reinvestigate that I didn't think of. Because like I said before, they think differently than I do, and it always helps.
Last word to you, Carolyn. What would you say not only to the Union Parish Sheriff's Office, but just to law enforcement in general about the role of psychic mediums in finding missing people?
Okay, well, I understand why they can't follow every lead that they get from a proclaimed psychic medium, because they would have a cesspool of wrong information because not everybody is as gifted as they believe they are. So, I mean, if I were in their shoes, I would understand that. But if somebody's credible and they have a portfolio that suggests that they have found multiple people, definitely bend an ear. If they find the body you can't find, bend an ear. You probably want to at least question them because they could be a suspect. I mean, that's just insane to me that nobody wanted to know how in the world I would know what was in her system, how she died, her body placement. It's stunning to me. It was claimed that the person in charge, he had a past experience with psychics, and that's why he refused to speak with me. And I highly doubt he has much, if any, experience with psychics. I really don't think so. But even if he has, he allowed for his personal feelings about psychics to get in the way of doing his job. And by what he said, those feelings haven't changed, right? And so it's just, he also said that he didn't know what I knew, which is not true. There was an email sent to him. We have written proof that he knew what I knew. Okay. So this is a complete refusal. So I feel like treating me unfavorably due to religion bias, okay, prevented him from doing his job and following up with the person who knew where his missing person was. And I had tons of information surrounding her disappearance case. And I just feel that maybe they need some training on cultural competency,
Hmm.
to avoid face value stereotyping in future cases. I'm not really sure, but just saying, like, I was written off because maybe they're afraid of psychic mediums or they don't put much stock in us, which I can understand. But when I have evidence that I'm providing you a tangible proof, including a body, you should probably just give me a little of your time. You're getting paid. I'm not getting paid. I did the work pro bono to give back. Okay. I have no dog in this fight. I'm just trying to help people, and you're paid to help people. You're paid tax dollars to help people. I'm not paid tax dollars. I should be, but I'm not. So there you go. You're getting paid. I'm not. I'm doing my job pro bono, but you're not doing your job being paid. That's how I feel. I
Yeah.
mean, when you really bully cube this up and like really reduce it down to the facts, that's what it is. I have more education, not to be an asshole, but I have more education than a lot of the people working the case. I mean, scholastic education. So, I mean, to be brushing me off as being crazy or making assumptions like this is just, it's cynical, as Greg mentioned. It's not based in any fact, it's based on feelings.
It's incredibly important to keep an open mind in an investigation and follow the evidence, as opposed to try to force it into, round peg, square hole, or some sort of template.
Well, I really hope this case is reopened, and I hope the next time something like this happens, and a psychic medium such as yourself, Carolyn, or someone else comes forward with credible evidence, that the police, as you say, bend an ear. Lieutenant Greg Lawson and Carolyn Clapper, thank you both so much for this conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Hey there, friends. Welcome to another episode of Strange Planet, and it is a far stranger planet than we can possibly comprehend. On this episode, Julian Assange, WikiLeaks publisher and founder, now, of course, a free man, but we're going to delve into his past, his legal battles, and his courageous fight for truth and justice. But before we get to that, just a reminder, if you'd like to become a premium subscriber and dive a little deeper into Strange Planet, it's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. You gain access to commercial-free listening, special bonus episodes produced exclusively for premium subscribers, and you receive my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. The link right there in the episode notes. June 24th, 2024, Julian Assange emerged from Belmarsh maximum security in the UK after having spent 1,901 days there, granted bail by the High Court in London, released at Stansted Airport. Then he flew off to the Northern Mariana Islands, which is a U.S. territory about 2,000 miles north of Australia, where he entered a guilty plea on one espionage charge and basically was given a 5-year sentence, but the judge said time has been served, and so off he flew to Australia to be reunited with his wife and 2 children. And this incredible story is now available in a terrific documentary. I've just finished screening it. It's called The Trust Fall, Julian Assange, the story of a man who risked everything to bring the truth to light.
This is generally the view of people. Oh, we don't know much about Assange. Well, you should know, because whether you know it or not, he is fighting for you.
For your courage and leadership and tenacity in journalism and publishing.
Since 2010, Assange has been held in progressively narrower, darker, colder, and crueler spaces.
He has been detained since the 7th of December 2010 in one form or another.
And we are now here after years of imprisonment.
WikiLeaks is a non-state hostile intelligence service.
I think the man is a high-tech terrorist.
A high-tech terrorist.
A traitor, a treasonous.
He has to answer for what he has done.
Assange faces up to 175 years in prison for publishing classified documents exposing U.S. war crimes.
The U.S. government narrative about Julian is a complete fraud. It is a complete fraud from A to Z.
Julian took on the most powerful countries in the world, basically all of them.
We now have confirmed that there were plans to kidnap Julian here in the center of London, or even assassinate him.
No one who instigated that illegal and immoral war has been brought to justice. But the great truth teller sits behind bars.
If wars can be started by lies, peace can be started by truth.
Julian Assange is a hero.
What if everything we thought we knew about somebody was a lie? Would we be willing to go on a new journey of understanding? This is a story of deception, lies, bravery, and a man who risked everything to bring the truth to light.
Mr. Assange shows all the symptoms that are typical for a person that has been exposed to psychological torture over a prolonged period of time.
He looked at me intensely and said, "I hate to say this." He then hesitated, visibly troubled and searching for words. And then he finally said, "Please, save my life."
May future generations have the ability to speak without restraint. May our children and their children know truth and have access to information that leads to justice. Wherever Julian goes, free speech goes with him.
If there is a bird that is about to take flight, stretch her wings and rule the skies, may it be a peace dove and no longer a bald eagle.
If you think Assange is a traitor, he's a rapist, he's a narcissist, he's a hacker, I don't blame you because you have been deceived. And if you think you've not been deceived, that's normal because otherwise it wouldn't be deception.
And the filmmaker responsible joins me now. Kim Staten is a poet, musician from New South Wales, Australia. He's the writer-director of The Trust Fall, Julian Assange, and the founder and director of Films for Change. He won an award for Best Emerging Director, Australia, at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in 2023. The Trust Fall was released in cinemas in December 2023 and has been shown at more than 350 cinemas across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, with more than 2,000 sessions and over 50,000 people viewing the film in cinemas so far. It is the most watched Australian documentary of the year in cinemas worldwide. The Trust Fall releases in the United States on the 18th of July, 2024. Kim, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me.
First of all, did I pronounce your last name correctly? Is it Staten?
That's correct, yeah.
All right. So the film obviously concludes before his release in 2024, June of 2024. And we'll come around to talking about his release. But I want to go back to his early days because, quite frankly, I didn't know a lot about Julian Assange prior to his founding WikiLeaks, I think around 2006. Interesting educational background, computer programming, mathematics, physics. That's not the type of background you would expect for someone who would end up being a journalist and a truth seeker. How did that all happen?
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting to note that he attended the University of Melbourne in Australia, studying maths and science and computer science, physics, as a mature age student. And before that, he had a successful career in encryption. So he was an encryption consultant and had success in that allowed him to attend university and pay his own way and not have to work. He had a residual income of some sort from, I'm not sure if it was software or just from his consulting that he'd done previously. So he didn't go to university as sort of fresh out of high school, but had a career before that. So he's around the age of 30 when he went to when he enrolled at University of Melbourne, but obviously incredibly bright. And his friend Niraj Lal, the scientist that attended university with him that we interviewed for the Trustful, commented in that interview that Julian sort of was way ahead of his classes and even ahead of the lecturers. He also mentioned that Julian was chosen for various competitions, physics and maths competitions. And so he was very much, amongst the brightest of the university, and that's one of the top universities. So you could probably be fair to say one of the brightest young adults in Australia at that time in the field of computer science. He'd also been an ethical hacker. He was notorious for that, and his achievements included assisting the Victorian police to crack down 2 different pedophile rings in Australia using his hacking skills. So he had that background, and then went to uni to challenge himself, and it was at that time that he came up with this incredible invention, the WikiLeaks technology, the anonymous Dropbox, accompanied by a website that couldn't be demolished, destroyed, a website that had multiple servers, multiple copies, which still exists and stands to this day with this collection of 10 million incredible documents.
Right. There's a line near the very end of the film that I think sums it up beautifully, what his legacy is, and that is he created a library that cannot be burned.
Yeah, that's right. It's the WikiLeaks website it's a rebel library of Alexandria. It's a digital library. It harnesses this ability of the internet and the digital world to store data for little to no cost and transfer it. And so part of this invention was that the website couldn't be destroyed. Of course, it was going to be under attack because it exposes basically every country in the world with corruption and crimes of various kinds. And so he knew it was going to come under attack. They'd try to bring it down. And so he came up with, the idea of having multiple servers, multiple copies. And when it does go down, which is pretty frequent, from what I've seen, you often go there and it's you get a 404 error, and then a few days later it pops up again because someone else there's multiple copies of the entire library and they can just put it back up from another server pretty quickly. So thus far, it's 14 years and 18 years even, they still haven't found a way to get rid of it. And so it does seem like a permanent library that we can all use as a resource.
So let's talk about some of the famous leaks that have been published by WikiLeaks. Starting around 2010, we had the classified material about American military activity in Iraq and Afghanistan. And maybe as we go through these, maybe you could just give us some broad brush strokes about what they revealed and why they're significant. Can we start with the military, the dump on the military activity in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2010?
Yeah, 2010 was when the WikiLeaks basically for the first time started to expose US information, classified documents out of the US. So the Afghan war logs and the Iraq war logs, and Cablegate, which was the DNC emails. Also the other the Guantanamo Bay files was also huge, exposing the torture of the US on children as young as 14 and as old as 89 years old. Hundreds of detainees at Guantanamo Bay that were just suspects of terrorism. They hadn't even been found guilty of it. They were just being held and tortured, even though Obama and the US government had claimed that they no longer tortured people. It was obvious that they were. And that was a shocking expose. The Afghan war logs revealed hundreds of excess deaths, and then the Iraq war logs even more so, 15,000 excess deaths, more than 9/11, just as a comparison of scale and how significant that would be to Middle Eastern people. And then there was many things that we learned from the DNC, the Cablegate release, disclosure, as it's called, including, that Hillary Clinton was taking bribes from Saudi Arabia worth millions of dollars, the Podesta emails, which are, whipped up that whole Pizzagate theory, which is quite dark and scary if you take the time to look into it.
Right, suggesting that there was some kind of high-level organized pedophile ring going on, being run out of this pizza restaurant, which in that one specific case may not have been true, but I think it was Rolling Stone magazine once said, this individual story was wrong, but the narrative is correct. I just wanted to back up to the Iraq-Afghanistan leak, because it wasn't too long after that, a few months maybe. I think that was in April of 2010. And then in August, we had Sweden, the Swedish police questioning Assange about 2 separate charges of, supposed rape and molestation, although we learned that had nothing to do with what that investigation was about. I mean, the timing there was kind of interesting. Do you think, I ask somewhat rhetorically, whether that was coincidental that the Swedish police would start investigating him for these rape and molestation accusations?
Yeah, well, there's various books and videos and articles that delve deeply into these Swedish allegations, and we brush on it briefly in the film just to basically swiftly debunk it, that people can go and look further into that if they wish. And but the basic summary of it is as you say, the timing is very opportune for the US, in that Julian is putting out all these damning documents, this powerful stuff with the Iraq and Afghan war logs, Cablegate, the DNC files and Guantanamo Bay files. It's all coming out, and I think they really. My impression is that they seized upon this opportunity. Somebody in the Swedish. The Stockholm police station definitely had political ties, into the political world, connecting back to the US. Also, one of the 2 women has also been traced back to having political connections. And, my interpretation is that, the 2 women went to the police to get assistance to convince Julian to take an STI test. It was simply that. And then it got, from there, they were manipulated. The women became victims as well. And they've both said that they feel victimized, that they were horrified that it was turned into something else. So it was a combination of, collusion between, members of that Stockholm police station with their political contacts, linking back to the US, combined with the mainstream media that just put it over the front pages of every newspaper around the world overnight, and somehow got access to what should have been a private interview. So there's a lot of illegality there on the way that interview was corrupted. And Nils Melzer's book, I should mention, The Trial of Julian Assange, delves deeply into those the documents that were uncovered by FOI requests from journalist Stefania Marizzi. What Nils Melzer uncovers in his book is more than 50 violations of due process on the side of the Swedish prosecution and the UK Crown prosecution, and then it was turned into something to create a legal paralysis. That they tried to use it to get Julian into Swedish custody so that he could presumably be handed over to the US. And that was why he had to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian Embassy of London for nearly 7 years, was to not get into custody and passed over into the hands of American prosecution.
Kim Staten is with us, filmmaker, poet, musician, writer, director of The Trust Fall, Julian Assange, and we'll tell you how you can watch it and where. Let's just talk about the perhaps the most damning leak, if you will, and that was the video that was titled the Collateral Murder. This was an Apache helicopter in the U.S. firing on, we're led to believe that these were armed insurgents, I guess, in Iraq. It turns out that they were working for the Associated Press, I believe. We were told that they were armed. They were actually just carrying cameras, and they were shot to pieces. And then we see a van comes to collect the bodies or to take them to the hospital, and that van is struck with gunfire from the helicopter. Just a horrendous incident. That seemed to be sort of the proverbial nail in the coffin for Julian Assange in terms of his persecution. Talk to me about how that video came into his possession and why it is so significant.
Yeah, the incident, the release is called Collateral Murder. The incident happened in 2007 in New Baghdad, Iraq, during the Iraq War. And it was an American Apache helicopter shooting down the 12 people, including 2 Reuters journalists. And then a van pulling up a father with 2 children in the van, just civilians coming along the road and trying to help. And then, the rain of bullets kills the father. The children survive because the father threw his body over them. And so, a horrendous, awful incident, just sickening. I saw that in 2010, like a lot of people. It's amazing that there's still people that have not seen that footage. It'd be interesting to know how many people have not seen it in this day and age, 14 years after it came out. But that's the case. We've been showing this film in cinemas and people it's probably more than half the audience never seen it. So they're seeing it for the first time on the big screen. It makes it even more heavy. It feels very real. So basically it was Chelsea Manning, who at the time was Bradley Manning, was working in the US Army as an analyst. She had access to this information and these documents, and like any whistleblower, couldn't let it slide. When somebody has strong ethics and morals and feels something is wrong, and it's going to nag you for days and weeks and months, and then she finally decided to share it with WikiLeaks anonymously. She ended up being convicted. I think she was in jail for 6 years, I believe, before her sentence was commuted, which is it's not a pardon, but it's basically like a suspension of the sentence, commuted by Obama, and whereas they kept pursuing Julian. That footage, that video, it's sort of like the modern day equivalent of the napalm image from Napalm Girl image from the Vietnam War, in its significance.
Or the My Lai massacre.
Yeah, that's right. You know, the naked girl walking down the road, running away from burned villages. You know, this video it's so powerful. I think it's only now being sort of matched by this gruesome, shocking video coming out of Gaza that we're seeing like on X, you know, nearly every other day. But you know, in 2010, it was this incredible, powerful and horrifying insight into modern war. It was not just the visuals, but the attitudes of the soldiers laughing, swearing and joking around as if they're playing a video game, and the impression that anyone really could take from their commentary, their dialogue in that video, is that it's something that they do every day. And so this was just a little slice of time, a little small window into, as Julian has said in interviews, you know, it's the little things that happen every day that add up. And so those 15,000 civilian deaths in the Iraq War is just incident after incident involving just one or two people. And that's what the Iraq war logs showed us. You know, I looked at those logs, and it's just, you know, each day there's numbers of entries, and it's just very brief little summary of incidents. You know, checkpoint, you know, somebody was hit by stray bullets, you know, or a car bomb, or a US bombing caused a house to collapse and 5 people inside, and just incident after incident created this harrowing figure of 15,000 civilian deaths in the Iraq War. So, yeah, I think that video, as well as the Vault 7 release, which was, you know, under Mike Pompeo, the biggest exposure of the CIA that had ever occurred,
and how they were spying on American citizens.
Yeah, that's right. Spying on American citizens through smartphones, televisions, even through cars, you know, through the systems in these various devices, and spying on people that not necessarily guilty of anything, just that they might have some connection to someone else, you know, guilty of something. And so the combination of all of these different disclosures, it was freaking out all sides of the US government, you know, CIA through to the DOJ, through to Hillary Clinton, you know, angry at Assange for putting out her emails and for apparently causing her to lose the election. And you know, so he just accumulated so many opponents, and then they went after him. And you know, under Trump, under the CIA, and Mike Pompeo started sketching up ideas of how that they could assassinate him, and from poisoning him in the embassy through to sort of letting him escape momentarily and then having a street showdown, a shootout on the street. You know, that was exposed by a Yahoo article, revealing, you know, statements from dozens of officials, former US officials, a couple of years ago. So, you know, there was definitely this incredible plot all the way back from 2008, actually, before the big US releases. The US already was starting to get advice on, you know, they saw WikiLeaks was going to be a threat to their unbridled power, and were looking for advice on how to undermine and destroy them.
Right, for basically exposing the lies and criminality of governments. I mean, that's the very definition of what a journalist is supposed to do. I mean, this is, you know, the New York Times published whistleblower accounts, the Washington Post, and Daniel Ellsberg, of course, from the Pentagon Papers, is featured prominently in the film. And we get back to talking about the trust fall, Julian Assange, with writer-director Kim Staten, back with more of our conversation right after these. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is, I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship. Enjoy the complete unedited episodes and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Kim Staten, filmmaker, poet, musician from New South Wales, Australia. He joins us from there right now, and the film is The Trust Fall, Julian Assange. How can we see it?
Yeah, well, it's coming out in some cinemas in the US this Thursday. There's a bunch of cinemas under the Angelica chain. So that's in Washington, Sacramento, New York, Fairfax, Dallas, San Diego, Honolulu. Also Dunkirk Multiplex in Dunkirk. I believe that's part of New York. So these bunch of cinemas are showing it. We're hoping that there'll be more cinemas on board, depending on how it spreads in the US, because, you know, being a medium budget documentary, we don't have this ability that blockbuster movies have to sort of go wham bam and put it out in every cinema all at once. That takes incredible marketing budget. We've never had that. We've been able to achieve quite a big run in Australia, New Zealand, UK because of organic sort of progressive release and by Assange supporters rallying their cinemas to take it on. And so, yeah, it's quite an organic process, but we're really pleased that these cinemas have taken this somewhat of a risk politically, really, to show a film like this. It's I'm aware that Assange is a very polarizing figure in the US. Surveys have also shown that. There was a survey a few years ago that showed slightly more than half of American citizens actually feel that he should be in prison, which was shocking to me. So, I'm really excited about sharing it with US audiences. We're also working towards the digital release. We haven't got a date yet for the digital release, so it might be at least 2 or 3 months, and then it will come out digitally on various platforms, Apple TV, Google Play, and Films for Change.stream and other platforms on a pay-per-view basis. So, we're going to continue to share this story, which I think is more important than ever in the face of, the decline of press freedom and the fact that there's more than 500 journalists in prison around the world for their work today. Julian being recently freed was just one of those 500.
The Trust Fall, Julian Assange, and the website is thetrustfall.org, and you can find a screening, you can host a screening, you can suggest the film to your local cinema, you can donate. Again, thetrustfall.org. I'll put the link in the episode notes. You mentioned the poll about just over half of Americans felt that Assange belonged in prison, and maybe at a certain level that's understandable, and I'm sure once they see this film they'll change their mind, but they buy into this narrative that as a result of all of these WikiLeaks dumps, people's, let's say, intelligence operatives working on the other side, of the enemy lines or what have you, were compromised or injured or even killed as a result. But has there been even a shred of evidence that even one individual has been killed or compromised as a result?
No, there absolutely has not. And one of the things that was revealed in this court hearing that happened in Saipan, the Northern Mariana Islands, a few weeks ago, the Judge Magnola actually gave us the second confirmation that no lives had been put at risk. She actually said, I'm going to quote her from the hearing, 24th of July, quote, "There's another significant fact. The government has indicated there is no personal victims here. That tells me the dissemination of this information did not result in any known physical injury." And that was on top of the original confirmation against this false narrative, against this smear that's been used against Julian, this claim that he put lives at risk, was during the trial of Chelsea Manning in 2013 at Fort Meade in the US. So the Pentagon spent millions of dollars, or $1 million plus, researching that, and found that no lives had been put at risk. They had no evidence at all, and they admitted that under oath in the court hearing. So now we have two courts that are American courts under American judges confirming that no lives have been put at risk. There's no evidence of that. And yet you're still seeing these sort of hack journalists, these TV reporters recycling this smear, this lie. It's shocking to see that even you know, the same day that Assange was being freed, and even though this quote from the judge in Saipan had been, the audio had been leaked out from that court hearing, and it was quoted in other articles, you still had this smear, and it's still being passed around. It's appalling. It's shocking that they continue to do that. And I think that shows that these are lazy journalists. They're not willing to do their own research, even just a few hours of research to challenge themselves on that.
In 2012, June 2012, he seeks and is given refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, political asylum, to prevent extradition to Sweden, where, as you say, he likely would have been then sent on to the United States to be indicted for espionage, and could have faced, you know, upwards to 200 years in prison, or even a worse fate if there is such a thing. Talk to me about, and you go into some detail in the film, Trustfall, about his time in the embassy and the psychological torture, the physical deterioration, how he was spied on by the security staff that were hired by the embassy to take care of him.
Yeah, he was in the Ecuadorian embassy for nearly 7 years. It would have been just a shocking ordeal, just a terribly difficult thing to go through. I think we all had a little brief taste of that during the pandemic lockdowns. Depending on what country and city you were in, it might have been anything from a couple of weeks, or if you know, months and months if you're under the draconian Dan Andrews Victorian government in Australia, which had some of the longest lockdowns in the world. But that's nothing compared to what Julian did. It was basically a 7-year lockdown, just in 2 rooms, you know, very cramped conditions, no sunlight. He had to, at some stage, get a UV machine and sort of bathe under it to try to get some UV exposure. So, you know, 7 years without walking in a forest or walking along the beach or hearing the sounds of nature. And then there were times where he, you know, wasn't allowed visitors except for his lawyers. So there's isolation. On top of that, there was all the stress created by the looming grand jury indictment that was building, and they were, you know, they were making it worse and worse with each new indictment that they brought out. His defamation of character through the Swedish allegations and other slurs, including, you know, that he was a bad house guest, all kinds of slander that was being put around. And then basically at some stage the cameras, the security cameras inside the embassy, which were originally just visual cameras, at some stage they switched them over to cameras that had sound as well, which made him suspicious. And when they looked into it, they uncovered that the security company employed by the embassy to protect the visitors and to protect Julian and the staff there, UC Global, was providing the footage from those cameras without illegally and without the knowledge of Assange and everyone there, providing it to the US and other parties through a Dropbox, which is definitely a matter of it's basically an espionage on their side, spying on Assange and his lawyers and visitors in the embassy. We included some of that footage in the film to sort of show what they were seeing. So they were using that intel to sort of plan there to sort of know what Julian was up to. Julian's one of his lawyers, Jennifer Robinson, settled with the UK government out of court for that spying in the embassy. So and it's actually an ongoing legal case against the US, against Mike Pompeo and the CIA. It's an offensive, proactive legal battle against that was taken on by Assange to basically attempt to prosecute the CIA for their spying. And, this all came out during the extradition trial and it had no effect. The judges shockingly just ignored that evidence, even though that should have been enough to throw out the case. So a combination of all of these factors just meant that 7 years in the embassy was the beginning of his persecution, the beginning of his torture. People claim that, if he could have just walked out any time. No, there was plots to assassinate him. He couldn't just walk out. It was a time of incredible anxiety, and it was only broken when basically the Ecuadorian government changed hands. There was obviously some corruption involved there, where
a payoff,
the US
right?
government
They paid them off, right?
Various loans, huge lucrative loans to Ecuadorian government in exchange. I mean, there's literally a letter that exists that makes it very clear that that's what they were doing. And so the Ecuadorian government had a new president, and then the new president was agreed to this offer by the US, a deal that would allow the US to go, send UK police into the embassy to forcibly carry him off and throw him into Belmarsh prison. So things got worse then, because he was in a more confined space, solitary confinement, 22 hours a day for 5 years.
Unbelievable. You mentioned how even though the court in the extradition case knew that he was being spied on, they simply ignored that fact. And I mentioned earlier that Daniel Ellsberg, the late Daniel Ellsberg, is featured prominently in the Trust Fall, in a very similar case, except he was the whistleblower, not the publisher. And of course, the Pentagon Papers were leaked and printed by the New York Times and later the Washington Post and I think the Boston Globe, where he exposed, again, sort of the what was happening in Vietnam at the time. Not only civilian deaths, but the fact that the war was not going well, and this enraged Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon, and Nixon ordered. I don't know if they were called the plumbers back then, but he ordered people to go and break into, was it Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office, to try and find some dirt to dig up on him. And that was the basis for his case being thrown out, right? The espionage charges against him, because the court realized, hey, wait a minute, this is illegal activity. They're spying on Daniel Ellsberg. They're breaking into his psychiatrist's office. The same thing basically happens with Julian Assange, and it's not even considered.
Yeah, there's been a sense for, all of these years of the extradition trial that's gone on for 2 or 3 years, that went on for that long. There was always a sense in my mind that the US were ignoring all of this incredible evidence, from the spying in the embassy through to the assassination plot against Julian by the CIA, and also Sigurdur Þórðarson, the so-called star witness of the Assange prosecution, the US prosecution against Assange. Sigurdur Þórðarson was, is a convicted pedophile and fraudster. And they blackmailed him to make false evidence against Julian Þórðarson. Once he was put into prison, or knew that he was going to prison, he fessed up in an interview with the Icelandic newspaper Stundin, a phone interview. I listened to that recording. He basically admitted that he lied in that testimony. Even that was ignored. And so there was all this sort of, each time these things came up, these developments occurred, the Assange supporters were hopeful that, maybe this will be the evidence that's enough to throw out the case. But, throughout this whole extradition hearing, what we've seen is that the UK courts are basically corrupt down to their bones. And it was only in this last stage where there was an appeal allowed on the grounds that Assange might be prejudiced against as a non-American if he's on trial in the US, and that under the European Court of Human Rights free speech provisions, that he might not have that the protections of free speech if he's on trial. That was the first time that we started to see any semblance of real justice in those courts, and I think that was a result of public pressure. I think those judges in the UK courts, they were new judges that were on board in the case in this last stage, and I think they were aware that the tide of public opinion was going against them, that they would just be obviously seen as being bent if they didn't agree to these facts of the appeal and allow the appeal. And that is as the Washington Post said on the 27th of June, is that it was a warning message from the Justice Department trial attorney stationed in Europe on April 4. Basically, someone from the DOJ station in Europe sent an email to his colleagues saying, this is what he wrote: "The urgency here has now reached a critical point. The case will head to appeal and we will lose." So, Julian's freedom apparently wasn't a result of diplomacy. It wasn't a result of the Australian government lobbying the US. That might have played some small part, that they were sort of expressing discomfort. As I see it, it was just simply that Albanese found it was getting annoying. It was he was being constantly pressured by the Australian public to do something. But it was really a result of the US realizing, the UK judiciary realizing that they sort of had to save face, and the US realizing they were going to lose, and Julian might be actually completely absolved of all of those charges and have a massive win. However, I think the Assange's legal defense team did the right thing by swiftly negotiating the plea deal, because Julian, his health is deteriorating. There's still the risk how can you trust the US DOJ, the US government, that they're going to, not just get what they want in the end and extradite him and put him on trial, and even potentially upgrade his, come up with new charges that might carry a death penalty. I mean, anything is possible. They could have done anything. And so it was basically a lifeline that the US sort of started to resume those plea negotiations that had been started, maybe 6 months ago, 9 months ago, before it all kind of came to that conclusion.
Kim, we'll take one final time out. We'll come back, keep you just a few minutes yet. Julian Assange's story, told beautifully in The Trust Fall. Kim Staten, the filmmaker, stays with us. Back with more in a moment. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. The Trust Fall, Julian Assange, the story of a man who risked everything to bring the truth to light. Kim Staten is a writer, director, and joining us from Australia. The TrustFall.org, thetrustfall.org, where you can find a screening, host a screening, suggest a film to your local cinema, donate. Thetrustfall.org, again, link in the episode notes. I just want to talk a few minutes about the making of the film. First of all, narration, Susan Sarandon, Roger Waters, and MIA, British rap singer and record producer. Tell me about landing those 3, getting them on board the project.
Yeah, and also the Tom Morello, legendary Rage Against the Machine guitarist, and Jonathan Oldham, an Australian voiceover artist. You know, I had a wish list of celebrity narrators I was hoping would be involved. Julian has many supporters from all corners and all walks of life, and that includes a lot of well-known people that have been brave enough to speak out for him. There's not many in Hollywood, especially, you know, at the moment. And Susan Sarandon's one who's, you know, puts the truth ahead of her career, ahead of making money. So she's been, over the last few years, speaking at protests in Washington and making statements on his behalf, just one of very few. And so, you know, the difficult part was to communicate with them in the first place. I had to, just go through various contacts and friends of friends and search around and just, it was that 5 degrees of separation theory in play, really, to try to reach the right people that could reach Susan's team and Tom's team and Roger Waters. It's quite funny how that contact came about. I'll give you a few examples because it was quite humorous, really. At Tom Morello, you know, I'd reached out, I'd tried various contacts, and you know, it just wasn't getting anywhere, because it's also like one thing to reach them, but another thing for them to decide to do it as well. Even after you get in contact, they're not necessarily going to want to make the time, have the motivation, have the trust in the work that you're doing. It takes quite a bit of effort. And so with Tom, you know, I'd tried, I was in contact with his manager or his agent, and you know, she just kept putting it off and saying that he was traveling and maybe when he gets back and so on. It's going on for months and months, and finally, it was a friend of a friend here in where I live up northern New South Wales. Was on the golf course, and he just realised that someone that plays on the same course as him, he's aware that this guy knows Tom Morello, and just called out to him and said, hey, so-and-so, like, don't you know Tom Morello? And he's like, yeah, we're trying to get in contact with him. And so, it came about that way. And then with Roger Waters, I was, again, trying for months, maybe 6 months. I had no contact at all. And then it was actually Nils Melzer, whose book I mentioned, the former Special Rapporteur on Torture of the United Nations. We included an excerpt of his book in the Trust Fall, which is animated. It's the bit where Julian is in prison and being visited by Nils Melzer and the doctors.
Where he squeezes his hand and he says, "Please save me."
Yeah, that's right.
Very poignant.
Yeah, it's a very emotional story. And I was just chatting randomly with Nils one day over Signal, and I mentioned that we were trying to get in touch with Roger Waters. I was just rambling about the challenges we were having, and Nils said, "Oh, I've got his mobile. I'll text him for you." And just 3 minutes later, I had an email saying, "Hey, Roger here, happy to do some narration." So, it was very difficult, but then also kind of easy when you had the right help. And most of the narrators were happy to volunteer their time, donate their time, and they did a terrific job. And, we got a nice contrast between male, female, different accents, American, UK, Australian accents. And, I was really happy with the result, and with their involvement, it opens it up to a whole other audience of all of their supporters that get, curious about the story. So it was a real win to have them involved.
Just tell me about you utilized animation in certain sequences. Why did you choose to use that format?
Well, the main reason was because at the time we made the film, Julian was in Belmarsh. They weren't allowing journalists into the prison, so we couldn't even interview him, let alone film. No cameras could be inside. And so the closest we could get was, Luke Flegg, one of our videographers, just marching up to the front of Belmarsh prison, the front door, and filming the facade and then getting told off, taking a bit of risk. And also we flew a drone. He flew a drone fairly close to it's from a distance with a zoomed in lens, but we got those overhead shots of Belmarsh prison and all that sort of stuff, but we couldn't interview Julian or have any contact with him. And so the obvious way to depict some of the situations that we wanted to visualize was through animation, an expensive process and a lot of work involved, but we had some really talented animators. You mentioned the part where Julian appeals to Nils Melzer to save his life. Another one that the first one that we did actually was the situation in the Woolwich Crown Court in London, where the extradition trial began, and Julian was held in a glass box at the back of the court, a glass room, and he had to, kneel down and talk through this tiny gap in the glass, which was obviously setting up a huge imbalance between, the Assange's defense team and the prosecution in that court hearing, where they couldn't even communicate with each other. So it was really
like he was a terrorist. He's in like in an isolation booth, like the cone of silence, and he
exactly. So various parts that was the way to visualize it, things that had happened in the past, to sort of bring them to life and help the viewer to understand those situations.
Well, it's weaved in very nicely. It's very tastefully done, and it's very powerful, the use of the animation. Let me ask you about the title, The Trust Fall. What does that mean? I mean, I think I know, having seen the film, but for my audience.
Yeah, well, a trust fall. Not everyone knows what that is, and it's a activity that you do sometimes in team building exercises or retreats, and it's basically you basically fall backwards with your eyes closed into a crowd of strangers, which is, if you do it, it's actually quite scary because it's, the whole weight of your body falling and you're relying on them to catch you. So it does take a little bit of trust. And so when I was writing the narration, about midway through the project, I knew it was going to be a really shocking, tragic, sad story. And I didn't want to leave the audience in a pool of their own tears. And so I started writing the last chapter in particular, with the aim to make it inspiring and motivational and sort of pick people up and say, yeah, look, we can do this. We can free Assange. And one of the things I wrote one morning was this idea. I just had this visual in my mind of the trajectory of his life being a decline, his health declining, his legal status declining, basically that he almost seemed doomed if he ended up being extradited to the US. So I visualized him falling into the darkness. And then I remembered this exercise of the trust fall. And so I realized that tied into this act that a journalist does, what Julian did, being well-versed and well-researched on what happens to whistleblowers and their publishers, what can happen, and knowing that he's putting out these incredibly shocking disclosures of war crimes and all of these crimes of governments, especially the most powerful empire on the planet in the US government, was incredible risk. And so he was trusting the people would save him, that his own government would save him, and that decent people around the world would speak out and support him. And so that's where I got this idea of the trust fall, and I wrote the words for that, and it became the title of the film. And that pose that you see behind me on the poster is it's photoshopped. It's Julian didn't ever make that pose. We had it done with a model, and then a photo provided by the wonderful Juan Passarelli. And it's this powerful image of someone who's willfully taking a risk to bring information to the public and trusting the public to save him from a terrible destiny or a terrible outcome.
Kim Staten, filmmaker, writer, director, The Trust Fall, Julian Assange. I've kept you quite a while. Just a couple of two more questions. I'll leave it to you to decide how quick they are. But you were in Australia when he landed. You were at the airport when he finally became a free man. What was that like? Just kind of paint me a picture.
Yeah, look, it was surreal. It was after years of campaigning for me and just full-time, 70 hours a week most of the time. And, to see him pop his head out of the airplane and pump a fist in the air and then just stroll along the tarmac and hug his father and his wife and lift her up off her feet. It was just unreal, just astonishing. I felt like I was witnessing a really important moment in history, and one of just only about 40, 50 people were there to see him arrive. It was a freezing Canberra night, probably 0 degrees, and my partner Natalia, our co-producer, and I, we really didn't feel the cold at all. We were so excited. He gave a big arms raised, thumbs up to the crowd. It was cheering. So, it was a hero's welcome. I really believe that he is a hero. He's not anything that what people claim him to be, this false narrative that's been spun about him. My conviction is he's absolutely courageous, heroic. He's made this incredible self-sacrifice, and anyone that takes the time to, look into the real story and accompanied with looking at what he revealed, the crimes that he revealed, not that he is the criminal, but he revealed the crimes of others. you know, this picture of him is that he's incredibly courageous, and he's really done an incredible service to all of us.
That old saying that the process is the punishment. So he's a free man now, but then the question remains, you know, has he been, I mean, who would blame him if he just decided, that's it, I've done my part, I'm going to retire, I'm going to enjoy my family for whatever time I have left. He's in his 50s now, early 50s. But are there any clues as to what the next chapter is for Julian Assange? What does your gut tell you, knowing a little bit about him? And is he the kind that just to walk away, or are there more WikiLeaks data dumps to come?
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Richard. Like, everyone would absolutely completely understand if he just wanted to have a quiet life from here on and write a book and give a few talks and things, but and, you know, not have a public life. But from the research and writing this film and all the interviews and all of what I've learned over the last few years, this is a man that was on a mission from the get-go. You know, there's various insights into that, and I'll give you just one of them that I think is the most powerful insight that I've had into Julian being on a mission, and therefore he's probably never going to stop, you know, this mission of bringing about transparency and bringing about peace and justice in the world through transparency, through information. When I was in about the first year, maybe a year into the making of The Trust Fall, I would get people contacting me and offering footage and videos and images, which was very helpful. And so a lady from Lismore, New South Wales, Australia, just contacted me out of the blue one day, and she said, I've got these photos of Julian, you might want to use them in a film. And they actually ended up being right at the beginning of the film, the 3 pictures of Julian pulling 3 different faces. He's 8 years old, red shirt on, gorgeous pictures of him as a young boy. And she told me that she used to work with his mother, Christine, and Julian used to come along with his mother, and her son would play with Julian when he was visiting. And she said to Julian one day, the typical question that you ask kids, what are you going to be when you grow up? And Julian said, I'm going to end corruption in the world.
Wow.
And that was at the age of 8. So the Julian that I know is going to recover however long that takes, whether it's 3 months or 3 years. He's going to get his health back. And, you know, the David and Goliath story is going to continue. But Julian's going to be stronger than ever. He's going to be more resource, have stronger strength of mind, and, you know, look out anyone that wants to continue to, you know, wage war for profit or continue to put out fake news and lies across the media, because WikiLeaks, I think, will become, you know, the source of anything truthful in the world that we can start to solve all the problems in the world using truthful information.
The Trust Fall, Julian Assange. More information at thetrustfall.org. Kim Staten, writer, director. Thank you so much for hanging out these last 60 minutes or so, and congratulations on the film.
My pleasure, Richard. Thanks for having me. Thanks for covering this important story, and best wishes, and keep up your great work.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.